I am joined this morning by Nick Wayne. We're going to be talking about AEW All In. It's the second time AEW is going over to the UK for a big stadium show like this. I haven't I haven't been there for either event. I'm starting to feel like I'm missing out being there in person. What's the atmosphere like over there ahead of the show this weekend?
So far the atmosphere has been amazing. I arrived to London on Tuesday afternoon, then Wednesday morning did the bus ride to Cardiff, which last night we did AEW Dynamite and taped Collision that will air this Saturday. And then immediately drove back to London, which I just arrived last night at about 4 o'clock in the morning. So it's been crazy. Last night it was a very surreal moment going out with some of the boys to get some food last night and walking past Wembley Stadium, knowing that we're days away from one of the biggest AEW events, the biggest AEW event of the year. And just knowing what it's going to be like, what the anticipations are already building as going into Sunday is a very crazy feeling to just see it in person once again and knowing
Mhm.
what's about to happen.
Now, you mentioned seeing it in person again. You weren't wrestling on the card last year, but obviously it's a little different this time around. Uh, any difference in emotions or feelings knowing that, you have a spot, a prominent spot on the card this year?
Very much so. The kind of nerves are up there way more, knowing that you have a full match on a show like this. But you're also blessed to have a spot on the show like this, such a packed show. It's probably around 10 matches on the main card, and the fact that I'm in one of them, going in as a champion, very blessed for this opportunity. And I'm willing to just knock it out the park. I'm willing to do whatever it takes to make a huge standout on the show on Sunday.
And, adding to it, it's your first title defense. So talk to me about the match going in. It's, not only your first title defense, but you're going in, it's a four-way London ladder match for the trios titles. You hear the cliche all the time, but odds aren't in your favor. We've obviously seen champions retain in matches like this, but people are going to bring up the odds all the time. And you're going against three really, really strong teams. Talk to me about the match itself and the opponents in the match.
So like you said, it is already two of the best trios in AEW. Two trios that have already held the trios champions before in this ladder match. Um, it's going to be unreal. Everyone's going for the same stake, which is the trios champions. But you also got to remember, I have Christian Cage on my team. Christian Cage, the inventor of the TLC, one of the greatest to do the TLC. So ladder match, TLC, very similar stakes. So having Christian Cage on our side is definitely a huge advantage for me and Killswitch. So that's kind of my biggest thing that I'm thinking of going to this match is that we have someone that's very similar to a style like this in Christian Cage.
Now, one of the things I've really enjoyed about not only you guys, the patriarchy being together, but since you arrived in AEW, which your 1 year anniversary, we're just about a year removed. You've been treated like a legit competitor the entire time. You were introduced by Darby Allin. You've been involved with Swerve Strickland in that time, and I'll go back to your relationship with Swerve in a little bit, but it's none of this like he's young, he's inexperienced. You carry yourself like a vet. They call you the prodigy. You've been presented the right way the entire time, and I feel like that really makes a statement instead of, he's a rookie, he needs to like, make his way up the ladder, so to speak. How has that helped you? Because obviously, people know that you're younger. Like you came in, you were signed before you were 18, and they know all of that already. But as far as when you get in the ring and the storylines, different matches you're involved in, you've always been presented as a credible wrestler. How has that helped you in your growth as a performer?
So I've always felt that the key to getting better as a professional wrestler is to work with people better than you. So being in constant storylines and matches over this last year with people that are veterans of the sport and people that are better than me, I feel like it's been a constant learning experience for the last year. Um, And of course, I'm very thankful to be in that spot from the get-go. That's something that I'll never take for granted, and I'll always keep very close to my heart. Um, but just being able to be under the learning tree of many greats and many veterans and many of the best to do the sport, it's a blessing to be under their learning tree at such a young age. And yeah, I feel very blessed to always be in this spot. I feel like I've always been in a good spotlight, which is also a big thanks to Tony Khan. He saw a lot of potential in me ever since I was 16. Um, so yeah, I'm very blessed that I'm looked at as a real competitor on the roster of AEW.
Mhm. It's funny because the first thing that you said about working with people that are better, more experienced than you, like I still tell my kids that too. Like
Yeah,
they're playing soccer and it's like they want to play like the whatever the league, or it's always like U10 or U11 or whatever. Like you want to play the older kids even though you're not as good as them now. Like playing against them and getting those reps, like it's only going to make you better. So,
seriously, it's a fact. Yeah.
and you had a match with Kip Sabian on last week's Rampage. How important is it to still get those single matches? You're a trios champion. You want to be in title defense matches like the one this weekend, but how important is it to still get those singles reps against another vet like Kip Sabian?
It's very important because it's always going on your overall record of your wins and losses. But also singles matches are kind of where you shine the most. It's 100% all eyes are on you. Not saying it's not in a trios match, but it's you and five others. You have two others on your team. It's a lot of tag in, tag outs, but in a singles match, it's 100% you.
Mhm.
You're wrestling constantly until the bell rings. So singles matches are still very important, and I'm always looking to shine every time I'm in the ring. And I feel like you best shine yourself in a singles match when it's just constantly you and your opponent. So
Do
very,
you
very important to me.
do you have a match that you've had so far that highlights what you bring to AEW, whether it's a trios match or a singles match, one that you're really proud of?
Matches I'm really proud of. I think top of the list has to be the patriarchy against Darby Allin, Sting, and Adam Copeland from last year's Full Gear. Um, That one was unreal. I'm very proud of that one. The patriarchy against FTR and Daniel Garcia. I'm proud of that one. Me versus Orange Cassidy for the International Championship. Very proud of that one as well. Those are probably my top three favorite matches I've had in AEW.
Yeah, and the first one you mentioned is especially interesting because you think about like how people are called legends in the business, and it might mean something different to me than you because there's obviously like there's a generation gap, but like Sting means something to me like WCW Sting, but then there's a whole generation that knows him from like like I was at the end of Surfer Sting, but still like he means something to one generation, and then you have like Adam Copeland is another generation. I grew up with him. Uh, how do you process that? Like working with different legends in the business. Like do you get
So what?
starstruck at all?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Especially with like legends like Sting. First time I met Sting, I was like, I was blown away. Like you said, I was starstruck. Like there's a literal legend in front of my face. Um, I met him pretty young, maybe 15 or 16 is when I first met Sting at AEW. Um, but yeah, I very, very starstruck. And at the moment, Darby showed him like a highlight video between me versus Will Ospreay, and he's like, I can't believe you're this young. He was like, you're unreal, dude.
Hmm.
And then continuing going on, when I started with AEW at 18, getting to work with him from the jump, was also a huge blessing. Just trying to pick his brain as much as I can, saying, please, sir, can you watch my matches? Can you let me know what you think? And he
Hmm.
always did. Um, so I'm very grateful that I got those moments with him before he retired. Um, but yeah, it's definitely something that it's like you think back to the younger you, and it's like, would younger me believe this right now if I told you that 10 years from now you're gonna be wrestling with this guy that you watch every Friday on Friday Night SmackDown? Um, so it's definitely
Mhm.
a huge eye opener, but it's something that I will never take for granted. It's something that I will. It's the highlight of my career thus far. So yeah, a huge blessing for me.
One of the I mentioned one of the things I appreciate is how you've been presented. Another one is the deep storytelling with your family and you know Mother Wayne, Christian Cage, Kill Switch. Like there's a lot going on since you guys have gotten together. Obviously, there was some friction before you started, uh, before you got on Christian's side, so to speak. But how has that part helped you too? Because sometimes you'll just see, matches or short form storylines, but I feel like in recent months in pro wrestling overall, there's been a real push for some deeper storytelling, and you've gotten a chance to do that with the various members of the patriarchy. How has that helped you in your career? Like I mentioned, you're just over a year in AEW, and a large portion of that has been spent telling this story that still feels fresh, it's still ongoing.
The biggest takeaways for me and stuff like that is kind of just how you tell a story for so long, you know, um, and how much longevity you can get out of like certain segments or matches. Because kind of on the independents, you would run storylines, but they were never like this long. You never had like a weekly kind of, especially televised show on the independents. So whenever it came to kind of storylines on the indies, it never got as crazy as this. So it was kind of like not a shock to me, but it was something new that I've never seen, but I was willing to dive in head first, and I was like let's do it, please.
Mhm.
Um, so it's definitely a huge learning experience for me getting to see what it's like firsthand.
I mentioned your relationship with Swerve. You had a memorable title match with him in Defy. You beat him for the Defy title. Uh, had some, uh, I guess, a reintroduction with the incident in the ring with Darby and Swerve, and you've had a few matches with him since then. I've heard people talk about him being like your perfect rival. Is that something that you agree with? Is it something that you could see him being like the guy you constantly go back and forth with? Like I guess the easiest comparison I would say in AEW in my mind is the Young Bucks and FTR, or like Young Bucks and the Lucha Bros. Like you don't always have to be working together, but when you go back together, it's sort of like magic happens. Does that make
Yeah,
sense to you?
yeah, I 1,000% agree. I think me and Swerve are destined to do this forever. Um, and every time since the first time we touched in a ring, every time we've gone back, it's felt like the anticipation has risen, and going from Defy World title matches and then going to my first match in AEW, and then now later for the World Heavyweight Champion, it's like every time we step in the ring again, the anticipation is higher, the stakes are higher. But I truly believe me and Swerve, two Washington Pacific Northwest guys, well, I truly believe we are destined to do it forever.
I'm a huge Batman fan, so immediately I'm thinking of the Dark Knight when he's hanging at the end. Like we're destined to do this forever. Like I'm totally using that in a clip. So,
Let's do it.
all right. Here's my final question. It's a two-part question, but I mentioned your relationship with Christian Cage in the patriarchy. Best pieces of advice from Christian for in the ring, and best piece of advice from him outside of the ring.
Inside the ring, well, definitely promos. Absolutely promos. I believe he's probably like the best talker in professional wrestling. Um, so definitely promos. I always thought for some reason that promos were like my kind of weak point. But having him, there and kind of helping me with promos and whatnot has been a huge help to me. And I've noticed progress in my promos. I feel more confident talking, you know.
Mhm.
Um, so that's definitely a huge help. In the ring, him watching all my matches, critiquing my matches, I'm asking him like, please just tear me apart with critiques. Like I want to get better. So that definitely helps. Having him so close, you know, that you could kind of just message or call or talk to whenever, is also very helpful.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, and then outside of the ring, um, probably we're close as humans as well. So just having like I've met his family, you know, so it's kind of just that like emotional attachment outside of the ring, you know,
Mhm.
just talking to us as humans. You know, when we put wrestling aside and we're talking as humans, we connect as humans. We have a lot of similarities actually, as humans, as wrestlers, things we've gone through in wrestling and life. Um, so I feel like he kind of looks at me as like a younger version of him, and he tells me all the time. He was like, I since I wanted to work with you, and he was like, "Thank you for proving me right on why I wanted to work with you." Like that was the biggest blessing to me when he told me that.
AEW All In this weekend. We have another episode of Rampage before we get there on Friday. Anything else you want to plug or promote before we close this out?
Yeah, Rampage this Friday, and then Collision on Saturday to reveal who will be the fourth team in this London's ladders match. Um, yeah, this Sunday, all in Wembley Stadium, 50,000 plus people. It's the biggest show of my entire life. I'm going into it. I'm ready to give it whatever it takes. I'm willing to, you know, sacrifice my body for one, retaining my trios champions, and two, to be a standout on this show. So I'm ready to get crazy.